one of the big risks that we have in the communities that we operate in is really ensuring that we align the expectations on the front end as we develop the project and make realistic commitments to the community in terms of jobs, other sorts of socioeconomic development opportunities, capacity building, such that when we get into the project and operations, we're not faced with this total misalignment between what the communities expect and what we're actually able to deliver. So that's a really unique challenge. And then I would just say, look, for us, we're an owner. We ultimately wear most of the risk on these projects. We need to execute our projects on time and on budget. And if you look at the statistics over the last 15 years, the mining and metals industry as a whole has destroyed upwards of $100 billion in shareholder value through poor execution of projects, late execution of projects, and projects being shut down. So, we have a lot of work to just align on getting our cost estimates right, getting our investment evaluation models correct, and then delivering execution strategies that enable us to deliver that project on time, on budget. If you're $1 billion over budget, $2 billion over budget, you never get that money back, right? And so, it's just so critical that we focus on getting it right on the front end so that we can execute on the back end and deliver what we promise our shareholders that we're going to deliver. And that's a huge risk in the projects. As you get above $1 billion, that's when you start to really see a degradation in performance, whether it's oil and gas or whether it's mining and metals and even large-scale power generation projects. So we're working hard to ensure that we've got robust execution strategies across our entire portfolio.
Excellent, thank you. And I'd like to wrap up, if I would like to ask each of you to share with us what you think are the keys to success when doing business in Latin America. Luis?
Have local presence. I mean, that's foundational. If you have local presence, if you can, then you're going to know local laws, you're going to know local culture, you're going to see how the infrastructure behaves or is available across the country. Develop the relationships. So you have to be ready to travel frequently to the region, to the country. Tom was saying that he goes to Brazil basically every month. I basically go to Mexico every month. I spend in Mexico at least 2 weeks a month. So you have to be ready to be present in the region. You have to be persistent. You have to be patient. You have to make sure that you do the right thing at the front end, meaning you spend the money doing the plans, the feasibility study, doing the strategic plan, so that makes you sure that you're going to perform and you're going to have the right execution. I can give you examples where companies didn't do the right plan, the right feasibility study, and they tried to bring equipment to Guatemala, for instance, and then they didn't have any port in Guatemala that support that kind of vessel. They then tried to do it in Mexico, download it in Mexico and cross the border. There was no infrastructure between Mexico and Guatemala to cross the equipment, so they couldn't do it. But if you don't do the right feasibility study and you don't do the right plan in the front end, you will have problem in the execution.
All right, excellent, thank you. Leandro?
Come on, Luis, you haven't left too much for us. But okay, well, definitely, you need to be locally aware. You need to be present on the countries and to build a relationship of trust with your clients, with your partners, with your suppliers. You need to understand and build a stable and solid supply chain network. Otherwise, on the first project, everything is going to be damaged. This is part of what Luis has just told. You need to understand all the aspects of the local and the logistics itself to get there, because you are not talking only about origin and destination. You need to understand what's in the middle. So basically is to understand the scenario, to understand the players over there, to move forward on Latin America.
Thank you very much. Spencer?
Yeah, I just keep hammering this point, but I think it's all about community. So, we spend anywhere from $2 to $5 billion on an asset, and then our plan is to operate that asset for as long as we can, sometimes upwards of 30, 40, 50 years if we're looking at a large scale copper deposit. So, we have to maintain that social license to operate in the regions in which we operate in. The communities have the power to shut us down. And when that happens, that can be catastrophic for a company like Newmont Goldcorp. We've experienced it before in a region that we thought we understood well in Peru, and paid with some significant consequences to the tune of multiple billions of dollars in write-downs. So, one of the risks that we face is around that, creating realistic expectations, aligning those expectations, and then ensuring that we manage those expectations throughout the life of the asset. I can't stress it enough. If it's done right, it can be a win-win for everyone involved. But at the end of the day, if it's done wrong, it can be catastrophic and take a long time to recover some of these countries in which we operate in. So certainly that's a primary focus for us at all times, on all levels.
Excellent. Thanks.
Yeah.
Tony?
I won't repeat everything that's been said, but I agree with everything that has been said. But I would add one thing. I've been executing projects for EPCI contractors for 25 to 30 years, and whether I'm doing projects in Africa, the Far East, Middle East, or Latin America, I would say that one of the things that you really need to concentrate on is culture. And I would say that fits into two categories. There's the social culture of the country that you're doing business in, and then there's the business culture. And you need to understand both, because on a lot of times they kind of cross over. From my accent, you can tell that I'm not American. I live in America for 20 odd years, but I'm Scottish or British. And I keep telling the guys from our company, when you go to Latin America and you meet people and you shake hands with them, and you need to interact socially. You need to talk a little bit. British people can tend to be a little bit stiff. It's all about the bit of business at hand. It's A, B, C, D, E. Sometimes it's not like that when you're in Brazil. Sometimes it's A, B, and a little bit of chat about social, and then it's X and Y, and then it's a little bit of social, and it's back to F and G. And so you need to understand that one way of doing business doesn't necessarily work. You need to change the way that you interact. And I think if you can understand that and understand the culture, you will be successful, assuming that you do all the other bits that have been mentioned.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for sharing your insights. And I'd like to hand it over now to the audience. If any of the audience member has any questions, we'll hand you a mic. Yes.
Hi, how you doing? With the tariff war going on, currently going on between U.S. and China, how do you see Latin America benefiting, and if there's any opportunities within that?
Definitely yes. We have already seen Brazil exporting more and more soybean, for example. But this is just one example. I think that we as Latin America, we must be creative to explore those opportunities. I'm talking about Brazil, but on the West Coast, it would be even easier to export to China and Asian countries.
Excellent. Yeah.
I have a point on that. As I said before, I've been doing business in Brazil for many years, and what's really interesting to note is that the amounts of conversations that I have in Brazil with people who talk about Chinese investors looking to buy into local companies, whether that is part ownership or buy them outright. You know, I hear of Chinese mills, steel pipe mills, trying to because of what's happening offshore, trying to set up facilities in Brazil. So I think that you can see that there is a definite push by Chinese, and I think that's a general statement overall to get into some of these areas that have really good CAGRs or year-on-year growth, and it's very noticeable when I go to Rio, etc.
And the way I see it in other countries in the region, other than Brazil, procurement and manufacturing, we do a lot of projects on renewables, photovoltaic parks, aeolic parks, and we see a switching from bringing material from China to the States, now moving the manufacturing in countries like Mexico, Chile, Colombia. So manufacturing of equipment for renewables parks are now moving into Mexico, some in Guatemala, Colombia, and Chile.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would just add the same. I think we'll see a shift if it lasts for a long period of time. We will start to see a shift away from some of those traditional Far East manufacturing hubs to alternative places like Chile, Colombia, Brazil, as projects and operations, and some of our major OEMs adjust their supply chains. I think that's what you'll see. You'll see that kind of capability shifting over into some of those alternative markets for sure. Right now, if we talk to a player like Caterpillar today, they will say they're still monitoring the situation. I mean, that's a big lift and shift operation for them to have to do that, but they're starting to have to look at some of those alternative options that they'll need to develop to stay competitive. You know, I think we're already starting to hear from some of our main suppliers that there's going to be surcharges coming. It's driving our OPEX up. It's not the direction that we want to go in some of those strategic partnerships that we have, particularly with a company like Caterpillar. And so we expect for them to develop those alternative strategies that are going to head some of these headwinds off at the pass.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Yes. The mic's coming up.
Thank you. Spencer, you mentioned at the start joint ventures with Barrick. Obviously, we read and we know about the number one, number two, number one again, and such, and it's really healthy competition, I imagine. And perhaps you can build up a little more on that. Familiar with both companies to the logistics, but what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so the question was around the Barrick Newmont Goldcorp dynamic, and I'm not sure how many folks have been following that, but we acquired Goldcorp, which is a Canadian mid-sized gold company, in January of this year for about $10 billion. We started that transaction, and simultaneously Barrick Gold out of Canada came with a hostile takeover attempt of Newmont, and that was designed to scuttle the Goldcorp deal and to force a vote with our main shareholders to take over Newmont. Our board rejected that, and we proceeded with the acquisition of Goldcorp. At the same time, we spun off all of our North American operations into a joint venture with Barrick. And so now you've really got Newmont Goldcorp, and then you have Barrick. We're about a 7 to 8 million ounce per year gold producer, and Barrick is anywhere from, let's say, 5.5 to 6.5, depending upon their operational performance in a given year. We've agreed to stand down for 2 years. Now that we've completed the JV, there's a lot of work there in terms of delivering on those synergies in North America, and we've got a lot of work at Newmont Goldcorp to integrate the two companies and deliver on those synergies. But combined, you know, we owe the market, you know, upwards of $20 billion in annualized synergies over the next 20 years. So we'll see. We've got two very different cultures between Barrick and Newmont Goldcorp. And so, you know, there's always going to be that that ongoing tension in the market. What our CEO will say today is, let's focus on what we can control what we can control, deliver on our market commitments that we've made, and we'll let the chips fall where they may in 2 years. At the same time, interestingly, we've got joint venture agreements with Barrick at KCGM in Australia, at Pueblo Viejo in Dominican Republic, and on Nueva Union, Norte Abierto in Chile. And of course in Nevada. So it's sort of this strange dynamic where you've got a fairly heightened level of competition, but at the same time, you've still got to collaborate and deliver the most value with those operations and on those projects. So it's an interesting time. Yeah.
Thank you. Do I have time for maybe one more question? I think okay, excellent. Well, I think, gentlemen, thank you once again for your expertise and your insights. And to the audience, thank you very much for joining us, and hope you continue enjoying your stay at Breakbulk Americas. Thank you very much.
Thank you.